So today I would like to talk about one of the most fundamental teachings of the Buddha, and one that we should all take to heart and to contemplate regularly. And that is the teaching, one of the first teachings that he gave, in which he taught us that desire is the main cause of suffering. Sadly, it's not the one we like to hear. We like to hear the other ones, which are less pointing in our direction and maybe a little more cerebral, and, so that we can think about it rather than actually live by it. To find out that desire is the cause of suffering, it's a difficult lesson, and it's hard to understand. And yet it's one of the first things the Buddha taught, and everything that he taught after that point depended on that understanding. So the truth of the matter is that if we do not understand the suffering of desire, or any of the reasons why we suffer, if we don't have that understanding, many of the teachings that come next will be superficial for us. They will not go deep. It's like understanding that prime teaching, that first teaching, that original teaching, is in many ways like the foundation of a house that we build. And a house that we build, of course, is our contemplation, hopefully our understanding of Dharma. So Lord Buddha taught us that primarily we suffer from desire. And even though he has taught that, when we look at our lives, it is very hard for us to understand that, because we tend to externalize everything. And of course we know that we externalize our experience rather than living in the primordial wisdom state as sentient beings. Everything seems externalized. It seems as though what is happening to us, that there is some distance or separation between self and other, between here and there, between high and low, between hot and cold. That is the kind of dualistic perception that we are habituated toward. And it is about habituation. It's about habituation, time out of mind, for such an extensive, long period of time, and for so many lifetimes, that the habituation becomes instinctive, instant, indistinguishable, really. It happens so quickly that we cannot see the process. And so everything is outside of us, so we think. And the prime problem with that understanding is that it's wrong. And it disables us. It prevents us from having a deeper, more relevant understanding, and from being competent spiritually in such a way that we can create the causes of happiness. We simply deny ourselves that awareness when we continue to think that events are happening externally and that they are affecting us somehow, unconnected, in some crazy, unconnected way. That's our thought about it. In truth, it is our ego clinging, our lack of renunciation, our desire to constantly create external circumstances that we think will make us happy. This kind of idea, this kind of addiction, is basically how we live our lives. So one of the most outstanding, shocking teachings, really, that Lord Buddha gave was to say that we are suffering simply from desire. Because when he gives us that teaching, he, in a sense, puts the ball back in our court. And don't we hate that? It's hard to understand why we hate it, though, because if the ball is in our court, we can play ball. We can fix it. We can hit it. We can put it back over the net. We can work with it somehow. But of course, if we adhere to a religion where things do happen to us and it's by the grace of some old man on the throne somewhere, that wouldn't be me. So some old man, some God figure or some deity, if we think like that, that somebody is working with checks and balances and, you know, gives us a good check when we do well and a bad X when we do badly, and we suffer because of that. If we have that kind of primitive, childish belief that even not only is our experience externalized, but what will happen to us seems to us then to be something over which we have no control. And so my thinking is I would rather know and understand what puts, well, basically, Buddha in the palm of my hand. I would like to know what gives me the power to create happiness. I would not like to know that there is another cosmic shoe out there waiting to drop. You know, if I think that the way I handle myself is going to get me some sort of punishment from an external deity. Lord Buddha not only taught about the suffering of desire, but he also talked about cause and result, or consequence. So while there is no external deity that's throwing lightning bolts at us, or, you know, turning us into pillars of salt or anything like that, still, since the ball is absolutely in our own court, we do suffer the result of our own actions. And how does that relate to what the Buddha has taught? Again, the Buddha teaches that yes, we suffer from the result of our actions, but that suffering is about desire and clinging. And that's what's the difficult part to understand. How can both be true? Well, cause and result, first of all, arise interdependently. They are ultimately and completely connected. In fact, it is only us that sees cause and result as dualistic. It is only in our state of ignorance that we cannot understand that the causes we put into play bring results that we may not like. And yet the Buddha teaches us that these causes that we bring into play are all wrapped around or connected with desire. Why is that so hard to see? Because we don't like the idea of giving up our desires. We were taught that one should have some desire, which we skillfully call a goal, and it's usually a materialistic one. And being very skillful, we say, oh, this is, my goal is to fulfill this duty and to fulfill this responsibility. And we sound so very noble when we're thinking like that. But in fact, we're all wrapped up in our desire. And we don't like to look at it that way because then we'll be completely flummoxed and have no idea how to conduct ourselves. Even though the Buddha taught us very well about all of this, it's these beginning teachings that us highfalutin practitioners don't like to think about. And that's the downfall, isn't it? If we forget the Buddha's first teachings, or if we haven't really accomplished them and contemplated them to the degree that everything we've done adds on and makes a strong house, brick by brick, you know, beam by beam, brick by brick, building the strongest house on the firmest foundation. If we don't do like that, then we get to wear the clothes and have the beads and all that. I'll show you my beads, because you all don't know that I'm properly dressed today. There you go. So we have our clothes and we have our beads and everything, but are we really accomplishing Dharma? And maybe we know how to do a little salung, and maybe we even know how to do a little Trekjot and Togyo. But do we really understand the heart of Dharma? It's amazing to me that we can somehow listen to these profound teachings that we are given by His Holiness every summer and by competent lamas when we have the opportunity, that are so profound, shockingly profound. So profound that one can almost not wrap their mind around it. You know, it's hard to wrap one's mind around these teachings. How we can take a teaching like that and make it this deep, this superficial. And why is that? It's not because the teaching is superficial. It's because we ourselves have not accomplished the preliminaries. And I guess you may understand by now that that's why I'm always constantly nagging on the preliminaries. Because it's never, never too late to get back to basics. Getting back to basics should be a part of one's Dharma career, whatever level we are at. If we have lost the understanding that it is simply desire that causes our suffering, and on the one hand we have this wonderful deep practice, and on the other hand we have nothing. We're basically shaky on the path, you know, not grounded, not full in our understanding. Like we might have some understanding of some elements. In a way, it would be like understanding the clothing of Dharma without understanding the heart of Dharma. And so it is important for us, and it behooves us, no matter where we are on the path, to remain as humble as possible, as simple as possible, and always return to the root of all Buddhist accomplishment anywhere it has been accomplished, and that is the Buddha's original teachings. We have constructed our reality in such a way that we have many misconceptions. Firstly, believing that what we see and what is in front of us is stable. Like, for instance, I'm here and I'm alive today, so surely that means I'll be alive tomorrow. And I know this is where your eyes glaze over, because nobody wants to think of this. And our natural defenses come up and say, oh, well, I'm doing well. I'm fit now. I exercise and I take my vitamins. And, you know, I watch my food. And, you know, I try to keep my spirits up. Don't drink too many spirits. And, you know, try to keep myself in line. So we think to ourselves through that, well, I'm satisfied with that. The case is, therefore, that I must be healthy, that I must be fine, and that tomorrow will certainly come, just as so many days have come before. And yet, even while we think that, and we think that we're being very sensible and reasonable to exercise and wash our diet and, you know, do all these fundamental, useful things that make our lives long and strong, we don't like to think that actually our lifespan depends on our storehouse of merit, on our karma, and that when each lifespan is born, that is to say, when you were born, at that very moment, the causes for your death also were born. That the same cause that births you causes you to die. These are interdependent truths. And so the moment that we are born, while it seems like our first agenda is to grow up, even so it happens that children do die. And then when we become adults, we think, oh, now we're in our prime. Even so, people in their prime do die. And then we think, well, now I'm not so old yet, so things are looking good. And it's that delusional process that keeps us from actually assuming responsibility for our own lifespan, which really we can. In the same way that we have learned in these modern times that it's useful to take some vitamins and to exercise and to keep up good life habits, you know, the ones that early to bed, early to rise, you know, that kind of thing. Those kinds of ritualistic life habits, all of those things are good, and any doctor will tell you that they do lead to better health. Yet we don't like to take responsibility for what actually, the actual engine that is running our lives. The actual engine that is running our lives is the quality of the karma of our lifespan. Lamas can see this in different ways. Many stories where a person has become very ill and has gone to the Lama, whichever Lama it is. I'll use His Holiness as a good example. Will go to the Lama, and I saw that once when I was there at the monastery. Someone carried this man in on a stretcher, and he was younger than me. He was a young man. And he went to the Lama and stayed there for quite a while, and I heard that His Holiness spent a great deal of time with him, and then yet we were excited to hear that, oh, maybe this poor guy was going to live longer, or there was some benefit. And in fact, it turned out that His Holiness spent a lot of time with him because he knew that the karma for this life had run out. And there are many stories of the first Ahkon Lhamo, and you've heard many of them, where people would visit her, and if she could see that the lifespan had indeed run out and there was no hope, she would very kindly invite them in and accept their offerings and talk with them for a long time and give them some teaching and offer them some tea. But she was known to be a wrathful Dakini, and whenever those that were sick or needy in some way would go to visit her, and she knew that there was some opportunity to help, she would get out her mala and start beating them and cursing them, and if they brought her turquoise and coral and silver or whatever gems that they had, whatever offerings they had, she was actually up on a mountain. She would throw it down the mountain and say, "What use is this shit to me?" Sounds like she was a little Italian, doesn't it? So she would just throw it like it was nothing, you know, jewels, coral, turquoise, really stuff that you would think was so precious. And yet the person that was dying would bring her a flower, and she would so carefully accept it like that. So the Lamas know these things, and what is it that they know that you don't know? They have the capability of seeing what the karma looks like. They have an inner vision of wisdom that tells them how to act. And they have no personal agenda. Indeed, every Lama has an agenda. They want to spread Dharma throughout the world. They want to liberate sentient beings. They want to make the world a better place. You know what the agenda of Lamas is, and each one has their own particular brand. I like to help animals. Another Lama might not think that much about animals, but be solely concentrated, say, on translation, which is just as, you know, valid. Each Lama has their own agenda. Of course, in our complete and total lack of humility, we think we know what the agenda ought to be. And we think we know what our Lama should be doing, but indeed, it's not for us to say. And the best student is that student that will join wholeheartedly with their Lama's natural agenda and thereby accomplish Dharma at the very side of their Lama, following in the footsteps of their Lama. In fact, you know, giving rise to the same hopes and wishes as their Lama. But that's often not the case. Instead, we like to think we know better. So when it comes to suffering, we think we know better. We think we know a lot about suffering. And we do. We know a lot about suffering. We know what it looks like. That's what we know a lot about. But we do not understand its source. We do not understand its cause. We do not understand how it came to be, or why it seems to be happening to us no matter what we do. So we have to go back to the Buddha's original teaching and original explanation. He said that, he taught us that we think of self-nature as being inherently real. And we cling to that self-nature although it's illusory, in a kind of almost psychiatric state. Even though the mirror tells us more truth than we can handle. Even though you can look at yourself as a picture as a baby and as a child, and then you see yourself as an adult, and then you see yourself as a gray hair. Even though you see these changes, even though you see, the position of your body as a young person might be upright, and then as they show in the picture of the 3 ages in Buddhism, sooner or later we're all shuffling around, kind of like that. So we even do not adhere to the advice of the mirror. And we cling to this supposedly stable I-ness and betray ourselves the entire way. It is betrayal of one's own purpose to think that that's it, that that's the truth. When the Buddha has taught us that to be born is to die. To take something up is to let it go. To begin something is to end something. The beginning and the ended, all causes are in the same link-up. One cannot happen without the other. And so we do not solve our problems if we continue to think otherwise. In our determination to establish self-nature as being not only inherently real, but solid and unchanging and safe, and that's the game. That's it. We're trying not to die. That's the whole thing right there. We are suffering from desire because we are clinging to our ego. And so in clinging to that ego, we lie to ourselves, we betray ourselves, and there is no method or truth by which one can live. A terrible state to be in. As it's taught in the teachings, it's like being a bee in a jar. You can't really get anywhere, you just crash from wall to wall. It's kind of like that. So in that ego clinging, we are determined to see things a certain way, and we fix our mind. And it's a very sneaky business. If you don't work with yourself while you're on the path, honestly, and really acknowledge truth, and work with it from the level of what the Buddha has taught, rather than trying to create for yourself some sort of patch-up reality and faked up reality. What happens is, pretty soon, there's a lack of self-honesty. And even though you might be going through the dance of Dharma, you might speak the words of Dharma, you might make the gestures of Dharma, there is no heart of Dharma. Because we do not understand and cannot accept that, in fact, every happiness in all of our future lives depends on what we do now. In this lifetime, we have met with the path. We have met with our teachers. And we have this perfect opportunity, although we are very busy people still, compared to how busy sentient beings can become in other realms, and how tightly wrapped their minds become in other realms. One could say, and one does say, according to the Buddha's teachings, that we have the leisure to practice. And we all know it to be true. no matter how much we say it's not true, we all know it to be true, that if our first priority is practice, is to practice the path of Dharma, there's always room for Dharma, if it's our first priority. If it's down on the list, it's like taking out the garbage. It won't happen. It's pretty low on the list. Or maybe reading the paper. It just won't happen. So it's a question of our understanding. When we deal with desire on a personal level, we take other people into this web. And desire, the trick of desire, the delusion of desire tells us that another person is responsible for your suffering. Or, better yet, another person is responsible for your happiness. It's one of the most arrogant things that we can possibly believe in. And yet, this is what we actually do practice even while we're wearing the robes of Dharma. It's not so good. We think to ourselves that we take people into our little web, we take circumstances into our little web, and we make what is called a structure of conceptual proliferation. In other words, we build a castle. And in our castle, we want certain people, and we don't want other people. And in our castle, there are certain things that we like, and certain things that we don't like. But does that castle have anything, any one thing, one single thing, to do with the causes of happiness or the end of suffering? Nada. Not a thing. And yet we believe in what we have created, this construct, as though it were made out of concrete bricks and were about to fall on our heads. Even though the Buddha taught us so much differently than that. Many times we get into difficult situations, and they usually are, you could count the categories on two hands maybe. Although each time we get into a situation like this, we think that it is unique and special only to us. Of course, ever maintaining our unique and specialness. And the way that we do that is we think, I have this particular situation. Let's say, topic number one, prosperity. Well, I have this particular situation, and I'm very poor, and I'm doing it because I'm practicing Dharma, which I only practice about 20 minutes a day. But, because I'm practicing Dharma, and I stay at the temple because I help out there a lot. Actually, I don't do anything there. I just hang. And I have all these different reasons. Oh, and I don't have a job. That too. And so we have all of this understanding that is based on what? It's a joke. No, maybe there's another way to look at it in the job business. Let's say you really are a monk or a nun or a real, for real Dharma practitioner. You're in like flint. You are practicing Dharma sincerely. And let's say because of that, you're a renunciate. Well, you're poor, but that's not a problem. You're not feeling poor. You've reevaluated your life and you think to yourself, well, money was nice. Money was helpful. But right now I have lots of time to practice Dharma. Right now I have lots of time to keep my temple in good working order. So I may not have everything, every object that I could possibly desire, but I know personally that happiness has increased since I have really taken renunciation to heart. And of course, what happens when we take renunciation to heart is that the inflammation in our minds that is caused by desire. I'm trying to see if I can make a vein pop for you. Desire! You know, that inflammation that is caused by desire tends to relax. And that's when the suffering ends. It's not when you get the thing you want, or when somebody supports you, or when people come through for you, or when somehow you can magically, even without working, have everything you want and still be a renunciate, huh? Oh, you forgot all about the wanting part. Yeah, the desire. So anyway, we try to work it out that way, but then we realize once we actually practice enough to where the mind relaxes, that while there are things we can name that we don't have, and while you could say that we're in the bona fide U.S. American poverty zone, still we find that we are much happier than when we had everything we wanted. And for many people, Christmas is a great time to figure that one out. Because you can spend the whole holiday season completely stressed out, or you can practice renunciation. And let's say another one is relationships. Ooh, is that tough or what? Man, relationships will suck your bone marrow out. Phew. But we love them. Can't get enough of them. Can't get enough. Gotta have it. Go looking for them. Go trawling for them. What do we do in our society nowadays? We go to clubs, we go to bars, we go to everything we can go to where we might meet somebody. And then when we get somebody, everything changes. And why is that? Because they changed everything. Has nothing to do with what's happening in my mind. They changed everything. And suddenly we start building our world, and we don't even realize it, around this reality, this relationship reality. From the Buddha's point of view, well, let's say from the Lama's point of view, we should all really relax about the relationship issues. Because first of all, any relationship that you start has ended. It's already done. You started it. You gave birth to the starting. You give rise to the ending. So forget about it, as they say in New York. Just relax. And the other issue is that we have such hopes that whatever this horrible, painful emptiness is that we have inside, this open mouth inside of our hearts that says, "Feed me! Feed me!" is somehow going to get fed. Of course, that isn't what the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught that we are suffering due to desire, not due to the presence of a relationship or the absence of one. It is the desire for someone to feed you. It is that neediness that causes us to suffer. It's that icky, sticky codependency that we do when we make other people responsible for our happiness, or think in our arrogance that we are somehow responsible for theirs. That codependency stuff, and oh, I'm looking at some too. And then it brings about this great conundrum in which now we have a train. Now we have a history of relationships that didn't work out. We had such high hopes. For a while it was bliss, and now And soon it becomes, you know, the albatross around your neck. Or you turn into some kind of ninny that does nothing but run after this object of your desire and get your mind all twisted up into crazy knots. And then wonder, how did this person make me so unhappy? Well, they didn't. You did that all by yourself. Just like the Buddha taught, you are suffering due to desire. If we could learn to relax our minds and meditate the way the Buddha taught, or to practice renunciation sincerely through the contemplation that I'm kind of guiding you through now. I'm making it lighthearted and fun, but these are things we should think about every day. Every day. I saw a show last night, I think it was a documentary on MSNBC about this guy that was a mass murderer, actually. Can't remember his name or the name of any of his victims, sadly, but he had this pattern that repeated itself exactly. He would come on to young girls, and he would like younger women. They're more workable, pliable. Very clean-cut looking guy, very nice looking, looked like, somebody you could bring home to mama. Looked like a nice looking fellow, talked well, well-spoken, read the newspaper, most people don't even think about politics or the world around them or anything like that. So he seemed like a nice enough guy, but he had this habit of he'd meet up with a young girl and he would be everything for her. He would give her flowers every day and red lollipops and, all these little romantic, wonderful things and tell her everything she wanted to hear and promise her everything she'd ever want. That should be sending off the red lights already. So then at the point where the girl would make some sort of commitment, he would begin to abuse her and dominate her. And then when she tried to get away, he would threaten to kill her. And then if she she actually made steps to get away, he would kill her. And this guy had killed like 4 people and 4 women and some of their relatives. And he would stalk. If the woman actually did get away from him, he would stalk her until he got her. And the pattern was so clear and definable that the main topic of the documentary was, how is it people didn't notice? I mean, he had a rap sheet as long as your leg. This had been going on for 13 years. He'd been in jail for this. He'd been in mental hospitals for this. And yet they didn't figure out that he'd killed all these people. So all the signs were there, everything was there, and nobody could tell. And that only seems shocking until you realize that if we live lives like that, except for the killing part, of course, in which we engage in this ritualistic behavior again, relationship after relationship after relationship, with whatever result, hopefully not the murder, job after job after job, mood after mood after mood. We have a train, and everybody else can see it, and we can't see it. So it's not really that shocking when you understand that we are fundamentally unwilling to examine ourselves with honesty. I mean, we have the method. It's all fixable. We can change our mind, which changes our life. Since mind is the root, consciousness is the root of all projections and all phenomena that we see, it's all quite changeable. But we don't like to hear about it because it isn't as much fun to do the changing as it is to do the experiencing. That is, until we change. Llamas are human too, the ones that aren't four-footed. And we all have the same human experiences that you do. What we mainly have going for ourselves, excuse me, my frog is acting up. What we mainly have going for ourselves as llamas is we have previous experience. On-the-job experience, lifetime after lifetime of accomplishing Dharma in some fashion. Brings a certain level of awareness or realization and a certain kind of habitual tendency. That is to say, in my case, I wasn't recognized until I was getting a little long in the tooth. I think I was 38, 37. People tend to remember this better than me. I think I was 37 when I was recognized, and I was already teaching Mahayana Buddhism, although I didn't know what to call it. So that was a habit that reappeared naturally. First of all, where would I get the gumption to teach? And second of all, Mahayana Buddhism? I was raised half Jewish, half Catholic. You mix it up, you don't get Mahayana Buddhism. So you just get trouble. So, but that habit reappeared, and I was able to start teaching some Dharma, and apparently there was something to it. So, emaho, that was wonderful. But then also by that time, I had already gone down the long and lovely road of modern relationships and modern experiences. Whoopee! Fortunately, habitual tendency raised its fabulous face again, and I'm finished. And my real habitual tendency has reasserted itself, and I practice a lot, and I love to practice. And I keep my mind in my practice, and when I don't feel good and I don't feel very happy, I practice some more. I found that if I'm in a, if my mood is really sinking like a stone, or I feel like I'm coming down with something or something weird like that, used to be that I would do what people normally do, go to bed, watch a movie, that kind of thing. But now I practice. I do the Chime Sokdik, or I call upon the protectors, and I call upon the protectors, and I do a lot of seven-line prayer, and a lot of just sitting meditation. So in doing that, I have found that I feel better. It's a miracle. And I also find that these days I'm not looking for much, and I'm never disappointed. I used to be disappointed all the time, but I've taken control of that. It's one of those things you have to take control of, because disappointment will frankly kill you. It'll knock you out of the game. Sadness and suffering of that kind, where you repeatedly reach for something and you're completely swatted in the head, it's a suffering that knocks you down. And so whose job is it to fix that? I mean, you could you could find your big brother somewhere and hope that he's very strong and he can go and beat up everybody that's ever given you trouble. But how's that going to help, really? The real deal is, and this is straight from the lips of somebody who came into this life with a propensity, a habit, and a mission, and went through everything that you went through. Everything that you went through, until I stood up and said, enough. This is crazy. And started practicing for real. I can tell you for sure that that's the answer. You may not think so. You may think one day that special person's going to show up with a rose and say, we're on. Or that, special job opportunity, life opportunity is going to be handed to you on a silver platter. And, you know, just because it hasn't happened yet, hey, why should I stop you? Dream on. But I propose this, that even if it does, it won't be the answer. Because it never is. It never is. You are the answer. Your heart, your method, your practice is the answer. If there's somebody in your life that feels that it's your job to make them happy, tell them the truth. If you are clinging to someone or something in your life because you've got renunciation on page 4 and you're on page 5, and oh, you haven't read that one for a while, sit down and read it. Because you're making yourself miserable. I've had the same layperson experiences that all of you have had, and even those that have been ordained for a long time. You had plenty of time to have layperson experiences, and sad to say, some of you still engage a little. So, we have not pronounced renunciation perfectly. We don't even like the word very much. It sounds so pursed lips, doesn't it? I must renunciate. We don't like that idea. We want to be, you know, passionate and gorgeous and fabulous. Well, the truth of the matter is, we might be passionate and gorgeous and fabulous for a little while, but eventually we'll be dead. And by that time, if you haven't got your mind under control, you haven't created good causes, and you still have this long train that you're pulling of habitual tendencies that are not helping you and are only making you suffer, and then you die, what good is that life? I can't even imagine what it would be like to come to the end of one's life and realize that, oh, you had all this time to practice and you didn't do it. And instead you wasted off all your time running after a dream. A dream that you made up in your head, has no basis in reality, is not connected to anything, and is nobody else's problem. And that's how we wasted our life. For a person who has no Dharma teaching, that's understandable. That is called the condition of samsara. But for you, what a terrible waste. I mean, what a loss, what a downfall. To come to the point in your evolution, and I mean not just the evolution in one life, but the evolution of many lifetimes, to come to this place of understanding, for somebody to lead you through the threshold into a room that is completely dark and full of obstacles and turn on the light and say, look, go left, go right, go this way, go over, go under, but you can avoid all this. And that's really what the Buddha has done. The Buddha has given us the light of understanding, the light of wisdom, to make us understand that all causes and effect are related, and that suffering is the business of our own heart. And I'm only telling you this because I want to give you my heart's advice. I don't think you should get hung up in the stupidities of samsara. I think you should contemplate the Buddha's teaching and really hear what he said to you. He said that you are causing your own suffering, and that you are able to heal your own mind. And he gave you the method. He said clearly there is an end to suffering, and that end to suffering is the Eightfold Path. For then in Mahayana it becomes wisdom and knowledge. And now in Vajrayana it becomes the great bodhicitta and primordial emptiness. This is the method. to realize and awaken to this state that is beyond that kind of suffering. We think that we reward ourselves with little treats. We give ourselves little treats, we think just to get by, get by treats. Like, a movie here, a love affair there, a little bit here, something else over there. And we think that that's going to help. And maybe it does for a little while. But eventually we come to realize that not only does it not help for very long, but it's another cause of suffering. Because everything that you have gained, you will lose. Everything that you are busting your chops on, if you'll excuse my French, right now, you will lose soon. Not one bit of it can you take into the next life with you. Not one bit of it can die with you. And as the Buddha has taught, you will die alone. We all die alone. What accompanies us is our karma, our merit, and our habits, and our blessings. You have the blessing of this marvelous path. Do you use it? I know you look like you use it, but do you use it? And that's why I wanted to make a special effort to talk to you about this today, is that I feel that it's time. And I myself have discovered that the more I practice, the more relaxed my mind is. And the more relaxed my mind is, the more free of suffering I am. And I come to find out that my natural state is relatively happy. It's not crazy happy, like manic happy, like jump up and down happy. Just good, Good. And I know where to go if I don't feel so good. I do some more practice and relax my mind. I wish that I could offer you on a platter enough magic love that would make you take care of yourself in that way. So that you don't go looking for it outside and form these little codependent bonds and these little stupid, conceptual proliferations and all this craziness that we just trap ourselves in, because really, you're not being your own friend. You're not treating yourself to anything. You're not being kind to yourself. You're giving yourself nothing. To be kind to yourself, to treat yourself, is to travel the path purely, kindly, and sweetly. To give rise to the bodhicitta, to let it shine in your heart. Bodhicitta goes out, not in. So long as you're waiting for somebody to give it to you, there is no bodhicitta. You see what I'm saying? As long as you got gimme on your mala, there is no bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is so radiant and all-encompassing that when you give rise to the bodhicitta, you have enough. And you may not be manic happy like a night of partying or something like that, but you're good. My recommendation then is to use the path better than we use it now. Better. I think if we were using the path better, we would take better care of our samaya, because it's our most precious gift. Samaya is commitment. Commitment is connection. Connection with our own enlightenment, with our own awakening. If we practiced our path better, I think we would keep our temple in better shape. Because this is the home of the three precious jewels. This is the seat of any accomplishment that we have in the future. This is it. This is where you started. I think we would have more compassion and respect for one another. I think we would have more kindness for one another if we recognized that indeed that was part of the path. And beyond that, the bodhicitta is the most precious gift. And that to give rise to the bodhicitta is to experience the bodhicitta. And so it's about time, and I'm here to remind you, we have this beautiful opportunity. We go to receive amazing teachings from His Holiness. His Holiness comes here and gives us amazing teachings, and we have other teachers that come periodically. But mostly, I'm just here to nag you and remind you that you have indeed, just as Terten Migyur Dorje described, Buddha in the palm of your hand. You have a tremendous gift. It's up to you to use it, though. And if I were your mother in the way that you actually came out from my own body, if you were that close to me, I wouldn't tell you any different. Please practice. Not only just say the words, practice deeply. Try to contemplate what the Buddha has taught. Because finally, I can tell you, I'm totally qualified to nag now. I've lived long enough to find out that he's right. It's official. It's official that everything the Buddha has taught us brings us happiness. And letting ourselves simply dive headlong, wild and crazy with desire into samsara will only lead to suffering. If you are smart, stupid, big, small, young, old, it's the same. It only leads to suffering. So as your spiritual mother, and I do love you as much as if you were my own children, please take this advice to heart. There's nothing I can tell you that is more true. That you have been given the method, but you must practice deeply. You must practice in a heartfelt way. You have to look inside and see. You see that desire, you see that clinging, that ego, that codependency, that selfishness, that wildness, whatever it is, handle it. You're the only one that can. We are not in a religion where you wait on your knees for somebody from the sky to come down and change everything. That's a different religion, I think. We have been taught the truth, that all projections are those of mind, and that there is method to end suffering. So I invite you to purge yourself of desire. And that doesn't mean you don't get to be a hot little number anymore. Oh. I know women say to me, well, you know, that whole purging yourself of desire business, I don't know, it feels kind of prudish. Whatever. Work it in your head somehow. I don't care. You are causing yourself to suffer because of stupid, childish ideas. Train your mind. That's the bottom line, isn't it? And we can do this. We can do this and we can teach others how to do it. And that's exactly what's needed right now, because when I look at the world right now, it is split in half and gone crazy. And I don't think the outlook is good. This is a dangerous time. And it is more important now for us as individuals to really get down to brass tacks and practice sincerely than it ever has been before. The more darkness we see, the more important it is for us to be the way, to be the light. And no bullshit, and take no prisoners. It's got to be the way. That's my heart's advice to you on this wonderful Sunday. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm glad to see you as always.
No.